Heavenly Stories.
Way back in the land of Canaan, there was a young guy named Joseph, about 17 years old, living with his big family, 12 brothers, all told, from their father Jacob. Now, Jacob loved Joseph something fierce, maybe because he was the son of his favorite wife, Rachel. To show it, Jacob gave Joseph this dazzling, multicolored coat, think bright reds, blues, and yellows, the kind of thing that'd make you stand out at a festival. But this coat? It stirred up trouble. His brothers saw it and thought, Dad's playing favorites, and were chopped liver. They weren't wrong, Joseph was Jacob's golden boy. Joseph didn't help matters. He had these wild dreams where he saw his brothers bowing down to him, like he was some kind of king. One dream had their sheaves of wheat bowing to his sheaf, another had the sun, moon, and 11 stars all paying him homage. Now, Joseph wasn't shy about sharing these dreams. He'd sit around the fire, eyes bright, telling his brothers, "Y'all, you're gonna bow to me one day." His brothers rolled their eyes, their jealousy simmering. Even Jacob raised an eyebrow, like, "Son, maybe keep that to yourself." The brothers were shepherds, tending flocks under the hot sun, and Joseph often tagged along. One day, Jacob sent him to check on them out in the fields. As Joseph strolled up in that flashy coat, his brothers spotted him from a mile away. "Here comes the dreamer," they muttered, their voices dripping with scorn. They were fed up with the coat, the dreams, and the way Joseph seemed to think he was better than them. So, they hatched a plan. Some wanted to kill him right there, but Reuben, the oldest, stepped in. "Whoa, let's not go that far," he said. "Just toss him in a pit or something." Deep down, Reuben figured he'd sneak back and save Joseph later. So, when Joseph got close, they grabbed him, ripped off that fancy coat, and threw him into a dry cistern. Joseph was yelling, pleading, but his brothers just sat down to eat lunch, ignoring him. Then, a caravan of traders rolled by, heading to Egypt. Judah, another brother, had an idea, why let him die? Let's sell him and make some cash. They pulled Joseph out, sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and watched the traders haul him away. To cover it up, they smeared goat's blood on his coat and showed it to Jacob, who wept, thinking his boy was dead. Meanwhile, Joseph was on a one-way trip to Egypt, scared but alive. Joseph's world turned upside down. One minute he's the favorite son in Canaan, the next, he's a slave in Egypt, sold to a guy named Potiphar, a big shot in Pharaoh's court. Potiphar was captain of the guard, tough as nails but sharp enough to spot talent. Joseph, though, wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for himself. He had this knack for making things work, like he was born to lead. The Bible says God was with him, and you could see it. Everything Joseph touched turned to gold. Potiphar noticed and put him in charge of his whole household. Pretty soon, Joseph was running the show, managing servants, accounts, everything. Now, Joseph wasn't just good at his job, he was easy on the eyes too. Potiphar's wife noticed and started making moves on him. "Come on, Joseph," she'd say, batting her eyes. "Nobody's gotta know." But Joseph wasn't having it. "Look, ma'am," he told her, "Potiphar trusts me with everything. I'm not gonna betray him or sin against God." That only made her madder. She kept pushing, day after day, until one time she grabbed his cloak, trying to pull him into her scheme. Joseph bolted, leaving the cloak behind. Furious, Potiphar's wife spun a lie, waving the cloak around and telling her husband, "Your slave tried to take advantage of me." Potiphar was livid. He didn't even ask Joseph's side, just threw him into prison, a dark, miserable place for Pharaoh's enemies. You'd think Joseph would be crushed, but he didn't lose hope. Even in that dungeon, God stuck with him. The prison warden saw the same spark Potiphar had. Before long, Joseph was organizing the place, keeping things running smooth. The other prisoners started looking up to him, like he was more than just another inmate. In that prison, Joseph met two guys who'd worked for Pharaoh, a baker and a cupbearer. They'd both ticked off the boss and landed in the slammer. One night, they each had weird dreams. The cupbearer saw a vine with 3 branches, squeezing grapes into Pharaoh's cup. The baker dreamed of birds eating bread off his head. Joseph, with his knack for dreams, listened and said, "God's the one who interprets these things. Let me help." He told the cupbearer his dream meant he'd be back serving Pharaoh in 3 days. For the baker, though, bad news, his dream meant he'd be executed. Sure enough, 3 days later, it all came true. Joseph asked the cupbearer, "Hey, when you're back in the palace, put in a good word for me." But the cupbearer forgot all about Joseph, leaving him stuck in prison, waiting. Joseph sat in that Egyptian prison for 2 whole years, forgotten by the cupbearer he'd helped. Life could have felt hopeless, but Joseph kept his faith, trusting God had a plan. Then, one night, Pharaoh himself had 2 crazy dreams that shook him up. In the first, 7 fat cows came out of the Nile, only to be eaten by 7 scrawny, sickly cows. In the second, 7 plump heads of grain got swallowed by 7 thin, scorched ones. Pharaoh woke up in a cold sweat, calling every wise man and magician in Egypt to explain it. Nobody could. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Pharaoh," he said, "there's this guy in prison who's got a gift for dreams." Pharaoh didn't waste time, he sent for Joseph. They cleaned him up, gave him a shave, and brought him to the palace. Pharaoh laid out his dreams, and Joseph, calm as ever, said, "God's showing you what's coming. The 7 fat cows and good grain. That's 7 years of plenty, Egypt's gonna be swimming in food. The 7 skinny cows and bad grain. That's 7 years of famine, so bad it'll wipe out all the good. You need a plan, and you need it now." Pharaoh was impressed, nobody else had come close to cracking the dreams. Joseph didn't stop there. He said, "Find someone smart to store up grain during the good years, so Egypt doesn't starve when the famine hits." Pharaoh looked around and thought, who's smarter than this guy? At 30 years old, Joseph went from prisoner to second in command of Egypt, just like that. Pharaoh gave him a fancy ring, fine clothes, and a chariot to roll through the streets. People bowed when he passed, shouting, "All hail Joseph." He even got a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah, and a wife, Asenath, from a high-class Egyptian family. Joseph got to work, organizing Egypt like never before. During the 7 years of plenty, he built huge storehouses and filled them with grain, way more than anyone could count. He ran the operation like a pro, making sure every city had enough saved up. He and Asenath had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and for the first time in years, Joseph's life felt good. But deep down, he couldn't forget his family back in Canaan, his father, his brothers, and the betrayal that sent him here. The dreams of his youth, where they bowed to him, still lingered. As the years of plenty ticked by, Joseph had no idea the famine would soon bring his past crashing back into his life. When the 7 years of plenty ended, the famine hit hard, just like Joseph said. It wasn't just Egypt, lands all around, including Canaan, were starving. Back in Canaan, Jacob and his sons were scraping by, their crops dried up and their flocks dwindling. Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt, so he sent 10 of his sons to buy some, keeping his youngest, Benjamin, at home. Benjamin was Rachel's other son, and after losing Joseph, Jacob wasn't taking any chances. The brothers showed up in Egypt, joining crowds begging for food. Joseph, now a big deal, was overseeing the grain sales himself. When he saw his brothers, his heart must have skipped a beat. They didn't recognize him, how could they? The teenager in the colorful coat was now a powerful Egyptian official, decked out in fine robes, speaking a different language. They bowed low, just like in his old dreams. Joseph's mind raced, but he kept his cool, speaking through an interpreter to hide his identity. "Who are you, and where are you from?" he asked, his voice sharp. The brothers explained they were from Canaan, just trying to feed their family. Joseph saw a chance to test them. Had they changed since they sold him? He accused them of being spies, which freaked them out. "No way, sir," they said. "We're just brothers, sons of one man. We've got a father and a younger brother back home." Joseph pushed harder, demanding they bring Benjamin to prove their story. To make sure they'd come back, he kept Simeon in prison and sent the others home with grain, secretly slipping their payment back into their sacks. The brothers were rattled. On the way home, they found the money and panicked, thinking they'd be accused of stealing. When they told Jacob what happened, he was heartbroken. "First Joseph, now Simeon. And you want to take Benjamin too?" he cried. "No way am I letting him go." But the famine didn't let up, and soon they were out of food again. Judah stepped up, promising to protect Benjamin with his life. Jacob, desperate, finally agreed. So, the brothers headed back to Egypt with Benjamin, plus double the money to cover the last trip. Joseph saw Benjamin, his only full brother, and his heart ached, but he stayed in character. He invited them to his house for a feast, which spooked them even more. They thought, "This guy's gonna trap us." At the meal, Joseph seated them by birth order, freaking them out further, and gave Benjamin 5 times more food. He was testing them, watching for jealousy, but they didn't take the bait. Still, Joseph wasn't done. He had one more plan to see what his brothers were really made of. Joseph was close to revealing himself, but he needed to know if his brothers had changed. Were they still the jealous guys who sold him into slavery, or had they learned their lesson? He came up with a test. As the brothers packed up their grain to head back to Canaan, Joseph told his steward to slip a silver cup into Benjamin's sack. After they left, he sent men after them, accusing them of theft. When the cup was found in Benjamin's bag, the brothers were horrified. They tore their clothes, thinking, "We're done for." The steward hauled them back to Joseph, who was still playing the stern Egyptian ruler. "What's this?" he demanded. "You steal from me after I fed you." The brothers pleaded, "We're innocent. We even brought back the money from last time." But Joseph zeroed in on Benjamin. "The one with the cup stays as my slave. The rest of you can go." This was the moment of truth. Would they abandon Benjamin like they did Joseph? Judah, who'd promised Jacob to protect Benjamin, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he begged, "Please, sir, our father's an old man. He lost one son years ago, and Benjamin's all he's got left from his favorite wife. If we don't bring him back, it'll kill him. Take me instead. I can't face my father without that boy." Joseph was stunned. This wasn't the Judah who'd sold him for silver. His brothers were different. They cared about their father and Benjamin. Joseph couldn't hold it together anymore. He sent his servants out, and with tears streaming down his face, he shouted, "I'm Joseph. Your brother, the one you sold." The brothers froze, terrified, thinking he'd take revenge. But Joseph waved them closer. "Don't be scared. Yeah, you meant to hurt me, but God used it for good. I'm here to save lives." He explained how the famine had 2 more years to go and told them to bring Jacob and their families to Egypt, where he'd take care of them. Then he hugged Benjamin tight, sobbing, and one by one, he embraced his brothers, tears all around. The news spread fast. Pharaoh himself heard and said, "Bring Joseph's whole family here. I'll give them the best land in Egypt." The brothers headed home, still reeling, and told Jacob, "Joseph's alive. He's running Egypt." Jacob didn't believe it at first, but when he saw the carts loaded with gifts from Joseph, his heart lit up. "My son's alive," he said. "I'm going to see him before I die." The family packed up, ready to start a new chapter in Egypt. Jacob and his entire clan, 70 people, plus livestock and all they owned, made the long trek to Egypt. Joseph met them in Goshen, a fertile region Pharaoh had set aside. When he saw his father, Joseph jumped from his chariot and ran to him, throwing his arms around Jacob. They hugged and cried for a long time, all the years of pain melting away. Jacob, his voice shaky, said, "Now I can die happy, knowing you're alive." Joseph settled his family in Goshen, where they could thrive as shepherds, and he made sure they had everything they needed, food, land, you name it. As the famine dragged on, Joseph's planning saved Egypt. He sold grain to the people, and when their money ran out, they traded livestock and land. By the end, Pharaoh owned most of Egypt, and the people worked as sharecroppers, but they were alive because of Joseph. His brothers, though, couldn't shake their guilt. They worried Joseph might turn on them once Jacob died. When Jacob passed away, they sent a message begging forgiveness for what they'd done years ago, even claiming Jacob had told them to ask. Joseph wept when he heard this, not out of anger, but because they still didn't trust his love. "Guys," he said, "don't be afraid. I'm not God. You meant to harm me, but God turned it into something good. I'll take care of you and your kids." He meant it. Joseph wasn't about revenge, he saw the bigger picture, God's plan to save their family and many others. The brothers finally felt the weight lift. They weren't just forgiven, they were family again. Joseph lived a long life, to 110, seeing his son's children grow up. Before he died, he told his family, "God's gonna lead you back to Canaan one day, like he promised our fathers. When that happens, take my bones with you." He passed away, and they embalmed him, keeping his body in Egypt, waiting for the day God would fulfill that promise. The story of Joseph and his brothers isn't just about betrayal and forgiveness, it's about how God can take the worst moments and weave them into something beautiful. Joseph's dreams came true.